At number 10 we have The Town Knows. In the wonderful town of Derry, it seems like a lot of the adults don't really care when a kid goes missing. They kinda have a, well, make another one attitude when it comes to missing children. I mean, kids are like really good t-shirts. They have a lot of sentimental value, but eventually you have to throw it out and get a new one. Jeez, that's dark. Well, this morbid little fishing village might be this way because they know that the clown lurks in the sewers. They might be happier complying with the evil beast rather than trying to cleanse the town of its presence. All the older people in town are like, we're grown up and that's not my problem anymore. But if only the whole town came together sooner, they could have dealt with this massive problem. Like, what is our taxpayer money going to? Let's take a break from fixing the town fountain and focus the funds on the demonic force living underneath us. At number 9 we have Pennywise can reproduce. What the hell is Pennywise? He's a creature from the sewers, he can shapeshift, but does he bang? Is there a Mrs. Pennywise somewhere down there waiting for him to come home from a long hard day of eating kids so she can kiss her hubby on the lips? Or does he just sit in that dark cave all by himself singing? Because Pennywise seems to do all the other things that other living creatures do, a lot of people theorize that he can reproduce. Most likely by laying eggs, probably because that's the creepiest way. Let us know in the comments if you think Pennywise lays pipe. At number 8 we have the movie takes place in hell. What if everyone in the movie is already dead? The town is crap. There's bullies running around who murder people, and a clown is trying to eat all the kids and give them horrific hallucinations. Well, there is a rather long Reddit thread theorizing that the whole movie is a metaphor for living in hell or purgatory, having to be faced with demonic forces on a regular basis and never being able to escape your fears. Even when you think you're free, the dark world is always closing in on you. At number 7 we have Richie Tozier as Pennywise. Holy moly, we're going super conspiracy on this one. So in the first movie, every kid gets confronted by Pennywise separately, except for Richie. He doesn't have an encounter until the group is together and they're on their way to confront the clown. Now this could be because Richie himself is the clown. I mean, it would be a perfect way to get a bunch of kids to walk right into your lair, become one of them, infiltrate from the inside, and then convince them to come in. That's CIA tactics. I like it. Richie also is the one that has the biggest fear of clowns. This could be because it's Pennywise's best attempt to impersonate a kid. He goes for a really hack obvious fear. They do appear in the same place at the same time, but this could go back to the theory of whether or not Pennywise can reproduce. Maybe one is the real Pennywise and another one is one of his offsprings. At number 6 we have Stephen King Lived It. We like to think that this is all fun and games, but what if the movie is based on fact? If you look at the timeline of Stephen King's life, it does line up with him killing it as an adult. Maybe Stephen went to war with the beast clown, took him out, and then wrote a whole book about it. I mean, it would be the best case scenario. You kill a demonic force and then you write an amazing book and make millions of dollars. At number 5 we have Pennywise is an interdimensional being. Where did the buck-toothed child chomper come from? The theory that I think I like most is that he comes from another dimension where there are several other Pennywise-like creatures. These monsters look for portals where they can find worlds where people are easily influenced by fear. Once they find one, they plant themselves down and start consuming. This would answer the question of where Pennywise disappears to every 27 years. He could be walking back through the portal and returning to his own universe, only returning when it's time to feed again. He could also come from a universe where the resources are really low and the only way he can feed is by going to another world. Climate change is a real issue no matter what universe you're from. At number 4 we have Pennywise is a demonic Native American folklore. In It Chapter 2 there are a couple scenes that try to break down where the creature might be coming from. One of the theories is that he was born out of a Native American ritual and used to torment the original tribe that was living there until they packed up and decided to set up in a new location. They should have left a note or something like, new people coming through, don't set up camp here, a monster will eat your kids, please give us our land back. At number 3 we have Pennywise is a high level psychic. How can this circus freak manage to conjure up all your worst fears? Is it because he's just a really good listener? Or is it because he's able to look straight inside your mind? He can look deep into the dark corners of your brain and find out exactly what makes you tick and what will make you wet your panties. He could also be able to use his psychic powers to influence other people. This could be why the police never investigate these missing kids. I mean, how many kids have to go missing before the police go, wow, that's strange, maybe we should look into this. Maybe there's someone or something killing all these kids. I mean, I'm a cop, maybe it's my job to figure this out. This could also be why Henry Bowers is such a maniac. Pennywise could be in his mind, forcing him to scare the hell out of the Losers Club so it's easier to eat them. At number 2 we have Pennywise is allergic to love. Are we still talking talking about Pennywise or am I in a therapy session? If Pennywise is this powerful creature that can turn into anything, why doesn't he just turn into someone's parents and then kill them when no one's looking? Why does he go through the trouble of making all these kids scream like Mariah Carey? Well, that's because Pennywise cannot eat flesh that is happy or loved. They need to be afraid, they need to be tormented. If Pennywise tries to eat a kid that isn't riddled with fear, it might actually kill him. There's something in terror that makes the kid so edible. His dietitian must be like, you have to ingest 4,000 calories of frightened children a day if you want that summer body. And at number 1, we have Pennywise will rise again. So chapter 2 means it's all done, right? There's no more scary clowns hiding in the sewers trying to scare us about the world. I wouldn't be surprised if Pennywise transformed into Greta Thunberg to scare millions of people all at the same time. But some rumors on the internet seem to think that this won't be the last movie. There could be a third movie on the works that explains the origin of Pennywise and where he got his iconic clown look. I don't know how I feel about this one. Once you start making an expanded universe on a movie like it won't be long before you have It 7 Tokyo Drift.
Number 10. Bruce McArthur. I'm starting off with a recent serial killer. Most of the ones I'm going to be talking about are older cases because they are ones that I would say are talked about more, but we need to remember that criminals like this aren't just a thing of the past. In this case, Bruce McArthur is the man who admitted that he targeted Toronto's gay village to commit a string of murders from 2010 to 2017. The darkest thing about his murders, other than the killings of course themselves, was that he buried the remains of the bodies in planters. He was, and I guess is, I don't know, a landscaper, so the bodies were actually found at his clients' houses in their planters. Like, honestly, just imagine if you had a gardener or a landscaper and decided for yourself to spruce up your pots with a few annuals mixed in with the perennials and you found a foot. I think I would yak, honestly. So take that as this is something that happened between 2010 and 2017. And so there are different theories on why he wasn't caught for those many years, but the serial killer allegedly targeted men who would not be missed, which is messed up. These people range from those struggling with homelessness to closeted married men, but the good news is Bruce McArthur ended up being sentenced to life in prison. Wrong as it is, McArthur isn't the only person to prey on the destitute or those in a less than ideal situation, which brings us
coming in at number 9, we have Stranger Things. So I am talking about season 2 of Stranger Things here, which I'm assuming you've all watched by now because it's on season 3, but in case you haven't, well, close your ears for just a few seconds. Okay, can we have a moment's silence for Bob? Bob, what a good guy! He was killed in a very, very savage way too. He didn't deserve that. Bob Newby tries to help Will Byers by dealing with his trauma. He shares a scary experience from his own childhood too. He says that when he was young, he had a recurring dream of a clown called Mr. Boldo who tried to give him a balloon. Sound familiar? Bob, by the way, we find out was brought up in Maine, which is where It takes place. Coincidence? Unlikely. It seems that the creators of Stranger Things may have dropped a subtle hint that Pennywise is real. Perhaps he's an agent of the Upside Down. His deadlights are kind of pretty similar. Or perhaps there is an even bigger evil than that lurking underneath Hawkins.
Number 8. David Parker Ray. He became known as the Toy Box Killer. This came from the name he gave his trailer that he fitted out with torture devices and sex toys that he used to rape and torture women. He did this with his accomplice and girlfriend, Cindy Handy. He is believed to have tortured and killed over 50 women, targeting sex workers by pretending to be a police officer or asking for services. He was found out when an escaped victim of his abuse, Cynthia Virgil, escaped and knocked on a neighbor's door naked and handcuffed. The total number of his victims is unknown, in part due to the fact that Ray died due to a heart attack in 2002 before he was questioned by state police, but torturing and killing dozens of women is super scary to think about, so enough about that, we're gonna move on to another lady killer. This is number 7, Velma Barfield. Everyone around Velma Barfield who she was close to seemed to die. Her son Ronnie once asked, how could the good Lord allow this to happen to a faithful Christian like Velma Barfield? And this was because she was a charming old lady, but that could be how she nearly got away with murdering 6 people. First, her first husband's house went up in flames after a bad fight, and Barfield had snuck out with the kids. Next, after her next husband mentioned divorce once, he became mysteriously ill and died within a year of their marriage. Then she had another relationship that ended with her house burning down and she moved in with her parents. There's nothing wrong with moving in with your parents later in life if that's your situation, but then both of her parents died within a short period of time. After that, people dropped like flies around her, and you might have have guessed it, it's because she was using rat poison to kill them. She confessed to 4 murders and was sentenced to be executed, but because she was defended in court as a sweet reformed Christian while her psychiatrist tried to convince the judge she had multiple personality disorder, there was a movement to defend her life. She was executed on November 2nd, 1984, as opposing crowds either sang hymns because they hoping for her to live, or chanted in hopes for her to die. But anyways, on to another lady killer. Wow! This is number 6, Nancy Hazel, aka Nanny Doss, also aka the Giggling Granny. This other husband killer was putting the serial in both serial romantic and serial killer. She confessed to the murder of 4 out of her 5 husbands, and authorities believe she may have been involved in the killings of many of her blood relatives as well, honestly. 2 of the possible family killings being the murder of 2 of her grandchildren in 1945. Nanny Doss likely stabbed her newborn daughter in the head with a pin and suffocated her 2-year-old grandson because he died due to asphyxiation. Overall, her murders lasted from the 1920s to 1954. When she was found out after loads of arsenic were found in the body of her late 5th husband, she confessed. Thing is, she was nicknamed the Giggling Granny because she couldn't talk about the murder she committed without laughing. They tried to talk to her and then she'd just start giggling, being like yes, I killed them. Creepy, right? Anyways, on to another nickname that someone got, or some 2 people, at number 5, the Hillside Strangler. The believed Hillside Strangler was actually 2 individuals. Kenneth A. Bianchi and Angelo Buono were 2 men who killed women and girls from the ages of 12 to 28 over a course of 4 months in the late 70s. They got their shared name as they left their bodies in the hills of Los Angeles, strangling them and then dumping them. So for backstory, the 2 were cousins that became pimps together. It's kind of believed that Buono influenced Bianchi into doing this. They targeted teenage runaways and they horrifically abused them in many ways. After some time, they moved into the criminal territory of murder. Not that the other things weren't criminal, but this is just tense. They would flash fake police badges at their victims, say they were taking them downtown, before bringing them to Buono's upholstery shop and killing them. There are 10 victims that the 2 killed as a duo and 2 Bianchi killed alone. When the 2 were apprehended, the jury voted against capital punishment even when the judge argued otherwise. They were strangling and killing people, and I don't know, you decide what you would have done as the jury. Anyways, on to number 4, Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez also goes by another name, another nickname, this one the Night Stalker. Not very fun sounding. He was a self-proclaimed Satanist whose main methods of murder involved invading the victim's home before killing. His first known victim was a 79-year-old widow. After apparently waiting 8 months to continue his killing, he went on to continue assaulting, beating, and killing, building notoriety of being the Night Stalker in the Los Angeles area. Many victims died and some survived. There was panic building in the LA area until a fingerprint was discovered and his identity became known. His capture in August of 1985 is like it's just one of poetic justice out of a movie. A photograph and name of Ramirez is released to the public, and a day later a man in East LA spotted him and told the police. This led to a chase, and then when Ramirez tried to steal a car to help his getaway, a crowd surrounded him and beat him up until police arrived. Poetic justice, as I said. And okay, buckle up because this next one is a doozy for sure. Number 3, Andrew KEHHOE. In the tiny Michigan town of Bath, Andrew KEHHOE was known to be a bit odd among the 300 residents. People said he was violent towards animals, was a bit socially awkward, and one woman even alleged that he shot her dog. While animal abuse is horrible and should never be condoned, this is small peas compared to what he later did. And if you think you're upset about taxation, you have nothing on Andrew. KEHHOE blamed a property tax that was levied to fund construction of a new school building for his own financial hardships and planned a devastating attack. He had access to the Bath School building as he was known as a talented handyman. He was appointed to conduct repairs. Then he bought explosives, and then he planted them. Everyone else none the wiser. Then, on May 18th, 1927, KEHHOE killed his wife and set his farm buildings on fire. Then, as rescuers arrived at the farm, the north wing of the school building exploded. It killed many of the people inside. Rescuers were starting to gather up at the school, and KEHHOE drives up and stops, staying inside his vehicle. Then he detonates a bomb inside his car, killing himself, the school superintendent, and several others. KEHHOE had been secretly planting explosives for months. There were even more explosives planted in the south wings that rescuers found that hadn't yet been detonated. Due to his actions, he killed 45 people and injured 58. And next up is number 2, Yorkshire Ripper Peter Sutcliffe. Just letting you know, these only get more gruesome. Wandering the halls at Franklin Prison in England, muttering to himself at the age of 73, is Peter Sutcliffe. You may know him better from his other moniker that I mentioned earlier, the Yorkshire Ripper. He claimed the voice of God spoke to him and told him to kill prostitutes, and following this, he is responsible for the murders of at least 13 women, mainly sex workers. He had a rather grisly method for killing his victims, which of course earned him his name. His main method for killing people would be by striking them from behind with a hammer and then repeatedly stabbing them with a knife, so that's where I'm saying it's quite gruesome. And even before he was notorious for killing, he had his run-ins with assault. In 1969, he hit a woman over the head with a stone inside a sock. Then in 1975, he assaulted 3 other women with a hammer and a knife, just as we had mentioned before in his style. Then later, in 1975, he killed his first victim, Wilma McCann. He hit her over the head with a hammer and then stabbed her 15 times in the neck and stomach, just as the way he became known for, and it's what a thing to be known for, you know? Sutcliffe continued these brutal murders until 1980, when the police were finally able to catch him after years of investigation. He is still in prison at the age of 73. On to the last one. Number 1. Luis Alfredo Garavito. If little kids thought Pennywise was the worst of their problems in the 80s and 90s, then they thought wrong. During that time, Luis Alfredo Garavito, dubbed the Beast, preyed on young Colombian boys. Due to the fallout after the Colombian Civil War, there were many homeless children and orphans who picked up odd jobs on the streets. Garavito took this as a twisted opportunity to trick boys between the ages of 6 and 16 into thinking that he had jobs for them. He would dress up as a farmer or a priest, offer them cash. He knew they had no one at home waiting for them. He then held these children as prisoners, torturing and eventually killing them. It wasn't until 1997 that police began to suspect they had a serial killer on their hands due to the mass graves they began to find. Fast forward to 1999, Garavito is tried and confesses to the deaths of 140 children. There are some estimates that say there are upwards of 300 victims. And that clip was just the beginning of a tape by Colombian authorities where Garavito confessed to his crimes. He was charged with 172 counts of homicide and was found guilty of 138 accounts. He was given the maximum prison sentence in Colombia of 40 years since they don't do life sentences. The thing is, he cooperated with police and showed them where the bodies were, so his sentence was reduced to 22 years. So that scheduled him for a release in 2021, which is, right now it's 2019, under 2 years, or pretty much 2 years. As a child murderer, it is expected that he will stay behind bars longer, but who really knows?
Coming in at number 10, we have It and The Shining. I love the YouTube channel The Film Theorist. They have nearly 8 million subscribers and I totally understand why. They earned it with their great theories. There is a link in the description box for this one, so do check out their video explaining the ins and outs of this theory. I'll just give you the headlines. So, they connect Danny's ability in The Shining, aka his shining, his physical ability. They think that it is also shared by the Losers Club and that actually the ghost that convinces Danny's dad Jack to go Coco Loco is actually Pennywise, just in a different shape. Shape-shifting ghoul.
To number 9. Dorothea Puente. Boarding house killer, death house landlady, call her what you will. She ran a boarding house in Sacramento, California, housing elderly and disabled tenants. She was popular with local social workers because she took what they called the tough cases. Alcoholics, drug addicts, mentally ill, or abusive tenants. Even if you look at her picture, you may think, oh, it's a sweet old lady, but you're wrong. She would get her psychotherapist to prescribe her horse tranquilizers so she could stupefy and kill her victims before she would cash their social security checks. She preyed on the people that got assistance and that didn't have a strong support system in their lives. She collected at least 60 checks from the dead. She was caught after an investigation regarding one of her tenants led to police noticing disturbed soil on her property, like something was just buried there. She said that she was grabbing a cup of coffee and then she bolted right out of there. The police ended up digging up 7 bodies and then they realized they had to begin the search for Puente, who didn't just go to get a cup of joe. They realized she was the killer. She was missing for 5 whole days before a pensioner listener she was talking to at a bar recognized her. She was charged with 9 murders and convicted of 3. Prosecutors said that Puente was one of the most cold and calculating female killers the country had ever seen.
Coming into number 8, we have the spiders. A fan theory was shared on Reddit linking it to the movie Coraline, and I'm actually pretty on board. So Pennywise reveals what we think is its true form when it turns into a giant massive spider. In Coraline, the character of Other Mother is also a shapeshifter capable of reality manipulation, eating emotion to feed herself, a lot like Pennywise, who also eats children. Other Mother reveals her true form to be Bedlam, a giant spider monster. Ringing any bells? Perhaps Pennywise and Bedlam or Other Mother are related. Creepy. Short and sweet up next. Coming into number 7, we have the Deadlights and the balloons. So we see Deadlights in it. They're a non-physical extra dimension. It's all pretty crazy and mind-bending. It's speculated that the Deadlights are an innumerable amount of balloons filled with a glowing light, which are actually the lost souls of the children that Pennywise has preyed on, floating endlessly in his mouth. Pennywise does seem to steal kids' souls after they look into the Deadlights, and I really do like the metaphor of souls being balloons. Coming into number 6, Pennywise is based on Pogo the Clown. There is a strong theory out there that Pennywise, a mythical but horrific being that masquerades as a clown, is actually based on real-life murderer John Wayne Gacy, who was scarily similar, a nasty killer who dressed as a clown. John Wayne Gacy made headlines in the late 1970s when he was arrested and charged for the murder of 33 teenage boys and young men. Gacy became known as the killer clown in the media, as he would often attend local events and children's parties dressed as a clown that he called Pogo. He helped spark the killer clown trope. Stephen King published it in 1986 and says that he began writing in 1981, which was shortly after Gacy's trial made national and international news. It does also kind of seem like Pennywise has a fixation with boys, a lot like the murderer. The Losers Club is predominantly males with just one female member. Coming into number 5, Bill Skarsgård was scarred for life. Thank you can have that one for free. Pennywise is portrayed by 29-year-old actor Bill Skarsgård of the acting dynasty. Bill did an incredible job on both of the It movies and always seems like a jovial guy in interviews. However, fulfilling the rigors of the role has reportedly taken a toll on him. The actor has admitted to having nightmares of Pennywise long after the movie wrapped. He said, "I was home and done with the movie and I started having very strange dreams and vivid Pennywise dreams. Every night he came and visited, it was the shape of either me dealing with him, sort of Pennywise as a separate entity of me, and then also me as Pennywise in circumstances that I didn't appreciate." Skarsgård said that he thought that it was a process of letting go of the monster that he'd created in himself. Heath Ledger's mental health was affected by his role as the Joker, which is said to have played a large part in his decline, so hopefully Bill Skarsgård can put the monster behind him. Coming into number 4, Stephen King was in the Losers Club. This theory suggests that it was real and that actually Stephen King wrote the book based on his own experience before his memories could fade. It is theorized that King is Bill Denborough. King is from Maine, where the fictional town of Derry is located. Redditor BrownSnake84 thinks that the experiences in it happened to King when he was a kid growing up in the area, and his writing is a way of dealing with his traumatizing experiences. It is thought that King founded the Losers Club, and with the help of Ben Hescombe and Mike Hanlon, he was able to piece together what happened to them before they could forget. Coming into number 3, we have 2012. It is thought that the Losers Club averted the predicted 2012 apocalypse. We know that Pennywise is an ancient evil, and it is largely speculated that he gets stronger each time he regenerates. According to the original timeline of it, the Losers Club originally met Pennywise in the 1950s, and he popped back for more doom and gloom in the 1980s. While the movies have adjusted the timeline, the last time in the books we see Pennywise is 1985, which means 27 years later would have been 2012, the years that the Mayans predicted the world would end. Those who read the books thought that if Pennywise had been left to his own devices, he would have returned and destroyed the world. Some thought he was even going to make a return in that year. The movies have a new timeline, but perhaps 27 years from now, it will be time to reignite the tale. Okay, I am here for this theory, I am shocked and I am on board. Coming into number 2, we have Poppin-wise. There is a theory out there that Pennywise and Mary Poppins are the same species. Horrifying. Redditor Humanoid Mold 5 posted a terrifying theory suggesting that there is a species link between childhood favourite nanny Mary Poppins and murderous horror demon Pennywise. The theory has had over 3,000 upvotes in 3 days. Let me give you the details. So Pennywise and Mary Poppins regenerate and return every 20-something years. 27 years for Pennywise, 25 years for Mary Poppins, and they tend to re-emerge to families they've had a connection with. The pair both have similar powers and are fond of singing and dancing, although one creature is decidedly more sinister. They both have living reflections that can function separately from their present selves. The pair both know what lurks in children's minds, only Poppins chooses joy and Pennywise chooses fear and evil. The Redditor draws a link here with Monsters Inc. and says that perhaps the reason Mary Poppins is kind and friendly is because laughter is worth more than fear to these type of energy demons, and Pennywise hasn't figured it out yet. Maybe Mary Poppins is only friendly because it better serves her. With that in mind, imagine what she would be like as a horror character, because I am scared. Both Pennywise and Poppins seem to have a penchant for balloons, and they seem to like Georgies. Honestly, I'm convinced. Taking it to the real world at number 1, we have the Bell Witch. Okay, so it is a fictitious story. Pennywise isn't real, demons don't appear and disappear and then reappear over time unless they actually do. There is a Tennessee urban legend based on real life weird occurrences. In 1817, a cruel presence began haunting John Bell at his family home. They had lived on the property for 13 peaceful years, but suddenly all of that changed. They began seeing weird animals and hearing knocking sounds and chains being dragged and weird guttural gurglings coming from the wall. This all went on for a year, and John Bell finally confided in his neighbours and a committee was formed to investigate what was happening. It seemed that a witch had begun communicating with crowds that formed to see what was going on. The energy seemed to feed her and spur her on. Sound familiar, right? Indeed, many say they spoke to the witch. It seems she knew details of the past and future, and she told those who asked that her goal was to kill John Bell and to make sure his daughter did not marry a neighbour. John Bell died after a long illness in 1820, and eventually his daughter's marriage was called off, which seemed to make the witch happy. In 1821, declaring her work was done for now, the witch said that she would leave for 7 years but then return. Which she did. She came back to talk with Bell's son, saying that there was a reason his dad had to die, but she never disclosed her motives. Great. She then fled again, saying she'd be back in 107 years, which would have been 1935. Now, it is undocumented whether or not she did return, but if we link this to the Pennywise universe, perhaps nobody remembered. To me, the Bell Witch and Pennywise have a lot in common. They're both creepy demons that seem to be able to disappear and appear at their own whim, basically. They feed off energy of other people, and sure, the timeline is a bit different, but there are some shocking similarities, and the Bell Witch thing did kind of happen in real life, which stresses me out. Okay, enough stress though, this is a fun video, so let's just move on with our lives, because Pennywise isn't real, unless he is, in which case, I don't know what to do. Just pray. Pray! Pray.